Hello and welcome to Hill and Valley. We are a creative studio based in Rochester, New York, and today we're going to be partnering with our friends over at Nanlite to bring you a video to show you our studio, as well as some of the equipment we use to make our videos and take our work to the next level. Let's go check it out.
We recently completed the construction of this cyc wall in our studio, and it's given us a lot of options for lighting. Behind me is an example setup of what we might do if a client asked us for studio lighting on a clean white backdrop. Let's take a look. So this is a very simple lighting setup. We have our key light, negative fill to provide some contrast, a hair light, and a background light. Let's start with the background light. For that, we're using an FS300 with a lantern softbox attachment on. Next up, we have our hair light, which is a 4-foot pavo tube with a barn door attachment. These lights are great because, just like the other pavo tubes, you can use them as RGB lights, using any color you want, as well as with the CCT mode, using either daylight or tungsten color balances and anywhere in between. So this one we currently have set to tungsten. And lastly, we have our key light, which is a FS300 with a Para 150 softbox on it. Using a light modifier this large is really nice for two reasons. If you're in a situation like this where the light isn't that far away from the background, you can get some additional light onto the background, as well as providing a really nice, wide, soft source of light for your subject. So we normally keep our two FS300s in our studio for two reasons. One, they're a little bit quicker and simpler to set up, and we often leave them set up, just having that single power cable from the head to the wall. But also, they only run on AC power, which makes them convenient for indoor studio usage, whereas the Forza 300s, which have a ballast and can run off of V-mount battery power, those are a little bit more convenient for traveling and on-location shoots. Over the years, we've accumulated quite a few of these pavo tubes in various sizes, and they're really convenient for both on location and in studio, so we keep one set here in our studio and one set on our camera cart for when we're traveling. So here's a completely different look that we can achieve with this cyc wall. This is an example of something we might do if somebody wants a more creative look for, say, a music video or something along those lines. As you can see, the background is completely filled with colored light. In this case, we're using a pink, and that is achieved by using these 3 Forza 60Cs. These are some of the most recent lights we've acquired, and they've been really helpful because they're all RGB and can be controlled remotely, so they're great for something like this. The next step for us with this studio space is to find a rigging solution for these Forza 60Cs to attach them to the ceiling so that they can permanently live on the cyc and we can control them remotely, changing background color and intensity. Behind me you can see our second generation 4-foot pavo tubes. And we love these lights because with the new covering they have on them, you can't really see the individual bulbs, which makes them really helpful for placing in the frame where you can actually see them. Along with that, they come with some new lighting effects like this pixel effect you can see behind me. We've used these new lights for these effects for some music videos we've worked on recently. So in this setup, we have essentially 3 lights. We have our key light, we have our in-frame practicals behind me with these tube lights, and then we're using 3 Forza Cs together to light the entire background. For our key light, we're using an FS300 with a Fresnel attachment. This really helps to focus the light and gives a really special quality of hard light. And now, as you can see, these Forza 60Cs are doing a lot to control the color and tone of the background. Another advantage to shooting on a cyc wall like this is that it allows your talent to move through the space and still have a cohesive background behind them, no matter which angle you're shooting from. This current setup is just an example of what the background will look like with these Forza 60Cs, but ideally we'd like to have the lights above so that we're not casting shadows on the wall as talent moves through the space. Once these Forza 60Cs have a permanent home, we'll be controlling them remotely, which is great because we can change the color however we want to. Now we're going to show you some of the location lighting gear that we typically use when we're traveling for shoots.
All right, so you just heard from Joel about all of our lights that live in the studio, but half the time we're shooting on location, so what does that look like? Over the years, we've invested in a lot of lighting equipment, so now that we have a second kit that lives on this cart, which we could take on location with us without having to break anything down or worry about if anyone's shooting in the studio, we'll have enough power and all of the right fixtures to make the video we need. And we have a little example set up over here, so let's take a look. So welcome to our little on-location interview style setup. This is right here in our office, but we busted out all of our lights just to show what we would typically use each one for. We don't always use this many lights, of course, but for demonstration purpose, here we are. First, we have our Pavo Bulb 10C. We actually have 2 of these set up right now. We have 4 in our kit total. And these are great because they can replace an actual light bulb and go into a lamp fixture, which will also provide power to the bulb. But they can also be used on battery power. They have a USB-C in, so they can be charged easily and controlled easily via the remote or an app. And they're also RGB and bicolor, which is great in a situation like this because you can use them as like a tungsten lamp in the background, or even if you want to use them in RGB, you can get a little bit more creative for like a music video. These are a lot easier to work with than an actual bulb because they can be controlled with a remote and you can easily turn them on and off. So similarly, we also have these 2 6-inch tube lights that you can see in the background that we often use as little accent lights. They're also magnetic, so they can be rigged up under cabinets or attached to pretty much anything, which has been super useful. Sometimes we'll also use them to light products or small items just because they're a much smaller and easily controlled fixture. And we also have a little battery grip for them so that they can run pretty much all day. Another really important light on our cart is our Pavo Tube 15C. These are 2-foot tube lights, and we have 2 of them. They're a little bit smaller than the 4-foot version, so they weigh a lot less, so they're easy to rig up, and we'll typically use them as like a hair light, like they are in this situation, because they're easy to boom into frame. They're also RGB or bicolor, so they can match your existing lighting, or if you want to just have a little bit of a warm hit from the back to motivate your practical lights, that's easily done. Another extremely versatile light in our kit is our Forza 60B. We find ourselves grabbing this one off the cart again and again for various reasons. Like you see it here, it's a good background light. We have our projector mount on there, so we can use different gobos to create different patterns, but we also will use it with a softbox or sometimes with a standard reflector as more of a walk-in light to sort of motivate our existing key light. That way we can really emphasize our key light and create a lot of separation with our subject. Next is one of our newest and our most powerful light on the cart, which is our Forza 720. It's a daylight balanced light and it's very powerful, so we find ourselves often sticking this outside of a window and pouring light into a scene or bouncing light into a scene, as well as oftentimes nowadays we'll use it as our key light. But today we're using it as a little bit of an extension of our key light. It's bouncing off of a large 6x6 and sort of filling in, but also helping to wrap their key light around a subject. Last but not least is our tried and true Forza 300, our very first light from Nanlite. We actually have 2 of these now, and these are 300 watt daylight balanced lights. They're still very powerful, and we'll often use them as fill lights or supplementing our Forza 720. And sometimes even as a key light like you see here. It used to be our only light source, so it was always our key light. But today we have our Para 120 on there. It's a nice big easy up softbox that lives on the cart. And we have 2 stages of diffusion as well as a grid to help focus that light onto our subject. So let's get these turned back on. We got our key light, fill, projector, hair light. So it's just really nice to have the flexibility to finally craft the look you want instead of just relying on what's available to you. And that's what these lights allow us to do. Those are all the lights in our on-location kit. Lastly, Joel's going to show you our podcast room.
So our final production space in our studio is our podcast room. As you can see, it's a pretty simple setup. We have space for 2 people to host a podcast, and to light them, we're using 3 Forza 60s. These 2 up here have reflectors on them and are being shown through a sheer curtain. We're using 1 more Forza 60. It's just using bare ball to nicely, evenly spread light around the scene. So this has been a tour of our studio here at Hill and Valley. As you can see, we use a lot of lighting equipment in our day-to-day work here, and it's been really helpful and convenient keeping all of that within the Nanlite family for a few reasons. We really enjoy that we can use similar lighting modifiers and adapters and cables between all of our different lights. And on top of that, the team over at Nanlite has been really supportive and helpful for us whenever we need them. So as much as they've supported us, we hope that you support them. And thanks to Nanlite for partnering with us on this video, and thank you for watching and supporting their channel.